Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session on small changes, big impact. So sustainability insights and decision making with Microsoft Fabric. My name is Paul Henwood. I'm a solution architect here at Ascent, and I'll be taking you through this session today. And I'm pleased to be joined by Andrew Wild from Microsoft as well, who'll be kicking us off and getting us started with the session today. So hopefully everyone's ready. We're going to jump in and get straight into it. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Okay, do you want to go to the first slide, Paul? So good morning, everybody, and thank you to Ascent for giving me the opportunity to speak here. So I'm part of our global sustainability organisation here at Microsoft, covering the EMEA regions, working very closely with our partner ecosystem, supporting a lot of our enterprise accounts in the business around some of the challenges that they see around sustainability, framework reporting, voluntary reporting, and really trying to help customers understand what Microsoft Cloud Sustainability can do. And we'll talk to you a little bit about that when we get to sort of the Fabric side. But just to kick off, I use this slide a lot. I really do like this. Having my background being in ERP, it resonates really well. But Satya Nadella, our CEO, recently said that having a digital capability around sustainability is going to be as critical as running a CRM system to manage and maintain your sales and customer service, as well as running ERP for finance. And kind of when we think about sustainability and reporting, a lot of people refer to it as carbon accounting, which is a good way of saying that. But, you know, having that ability to actually be able to report either on carbon data, water data, waste data, or even some of the new regulatory requirements around social and governance can be a challenge, and is a challenge for our customers. So if you could just move on one, please, Paul. So when we kind of think about where the challenge and what the problem statement is, I mean, first and foremost, you know, there's been a huge increase in reporting regulations around all things environmental, social and governance, or ESG as we call it for short. Obviously, the one that comes to top of probably everybody's mind is CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. But, you know, that's just one. And, you know, we funnily call it the alphabet soup of the regulatory world because, you know, you have GRI, CDP, SASB, CSBBB. It's just crazy. There's acronyms all over the place. But the reality is a lot of these are regulatory frameworks that require some kind of submission or disclosure against, as well as the voluntary ones. And the voluntary ones are there to help you know, customers, partners, suppliers to sort of really track what their net zero transformation looks like and use some standard reporting metrics to do that and report that out to the various stakeholders. But when we think about CSRD, and I always kind of temper this and say, you know, please don't just think it's all about CSRD, because any ESG reporting platform needs to accommodate many, many different frameworks, both voluntary as well as kind of mandatory. But when we look at CSRD, you know, there's potentially over 1,100 data points in there, which is a huge amount of data. And this is kind of where the issue statement comes in, that it is all about the data. If you get the data right in the first instance, when you think about your ESG or your sustainability journey, that's going to make things a lot easier when you kind of get to these disclosures or reporting pieces. But also, it's not new. You know, people have been doing carbon reporting for quite a long time now. You know, 10 years or more this has been around, but typically it's done on our old friend Excel. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So when you look at this and when you look at the reporting and collation of data, you know, we see huge savings for customers around actually automating that process and making it a data-driven process in terms of how you deliver the output, how you deliver the data, and how you deliver the reports to the stakeholders. Okay, next slide, please, Paul. And, you know, when we think about some of the challenges, and I've been in ERP for a very, very long time, probably most of my working career, it's quite interesting because the challenges we saw back in the day with ERP and still see today are very similar to the data challenges that we see in ESG. So again, it kind of adds credence to that notion. It is all about the carbon accounting. But really trying to navigate with the evolving standards and regulations, and there are huge amounts, you know, there are so many of them. CSRD, again, I mentioned that before, but when we look at CSBBB, that is one that's coming up in 2027. That's when people will have to disclose against that. And that's all to do with governance and governance around accounting, governance around disclosing sustainable data, etc. That's another critical one that will be a regulatory framework that customers are going to have to work to. So, you know, when you think about building out an ESG platform, it's not just about building a platform that will support CSRD. It's about building an ESG data estate that will accommodate all of these different frameworks. Again, the regulatory ones, but also the voluntary ones, which help you, track your net zero transformation journey, etc. Most of the processes we see with our customers, and as I mentioned at the start of the call, we deal with our global and enterprise customers in our organization. It's all very manual process today. It's grabbing those spreadsheets, mashing those spreadsheets together and trying to upload the data, or trying to get the data in a format that is in, a calculated standard as defined either by, the Paris Agreement or the greenhouse gas protocols. But it's still a very, very slow manual process. And all of those data typically are siloed. They sit in their own little silos, and it's very difficult to aggregate, bring that data together and transform it. The other kind of big problem is, value chain transparency. A lot of the data doesn't belong to you. It's not the customer's data. It's kind of third party, especially when we think about scope 3 emission. Scope 3 typically is our supply chain data. We have to get a way to collate that, bring that in and do the calculations across it as well. And then also we need to make sure that when we've got that data, we can align it to our cultural and organizational standards and aspirations as a business. So it's not just about reporting to stakeholders internally, but also reporting out to stakeholders externally, to the markets, etc. Next slide, please, Paul. So some of the things, that we have seen, and, it does drive business value. CSRD is a problem statement. It's difficult, it's challenging, absolutely. And when you look at the other frameworks, trying to get a data set in place and report on that, it's not something you'll do in a couple of days. But when you've done it, there are some really great business value metrics that we're seeing already from our customers. This ability to respond to new and emerging regulations. And when you look at kind of sustainability and having a sustainable brand, especially in retail, that's a huge part of your commodity. That's a huge part of who you are as an organization. And, damage to that brand can be impacted or affected by some of the sustainable reporting things you have to do. But being able to respond to regulations is critical. It will improve efficiencies and reduce costs because you are looking at how you can automate a lot of that data. But once you've got that, using some of the new AI capabilities, having the right data in place, it allows you to look at that underlying data and just do what if scenarios. What happens if I change from supplier A to supplier B? Does that give me an impact on my carbon emission output? What is the commercial impact of doing that? So there's some absolute benefits that can be seen from that. It's a lot easier, as I've already mentioned, to sort of anticipate and exceed stakeholder expectations. When a lot of global businesses, they report to the markets, it's a similar kind of thing. Once the disclosures get to that, it's really critical that people can do this in a very timely and accurate manner. And then in reducing resilience and reducing costs, CSRD is going to come with some kind of penalty if non-disclosure is done. We already see penalties in Spain, if companies are not reporting on the plastic that's been brought into the country. There's something like €1,000 mandatory fine per day if those reports are inaccurate or are just not being submitted. So there's some huge implications to this. And final slide, please, Paul. But we're not going to talk too much about cloud sustainability today, but just to kind of give you a bit of an idea, Microsoft's been doing this for a very long time, not only kind of reporting out our own sustainable journey, but also, supporting our customers on their journey and providing tooling for the platforms. So when you think about Microsoft Cloud Sustainability, it's not just there to help you do CSRD. It's a lot more. It's a data management framework, as Paul will talk to. We deal with the data and the calculations as defined by the various benchmarks that are out there. But it also allows and supports you around these disclosures, both voluntary as well as mandatory. But the main thing is that the platform is there to help customers kind of bring that data together, simplify the process around that, and simplify the process around effectively presenting out their own sustainable journey, presenting out all their own sustainable metrics and being able to benchmark against those year on year. So that gives you a very, very kind of brief overview of what we do for cloud sustainability. I'm going to hand over to Paul now, who's going to talk to you a lot more about that data problem.
Thank you very much, Andrew. As you've heard from Andrew there, this is really about the context around why this is important to you. But let me talk to you a little bit around kind of a recent customer journey and kind of how we can really help you on your sustainability journey. So first, let me start a little bit about Ascent. Obviously, you know who Microsoft are, but let me tell you a little bit about Ascent. So we're a design-led data, software, and cloud business that really specializes on AI advanced analytics. We've got lots of different advanced specializations and accreditations from Microsoft, and we've really been working with a wide variety of customers to implement both kind of data, AI solutions, but also sustainability solutions. In fact, what I want to start with is a recent customer project that myself and the team completed. So let me give you a bit of context about it first, and then I'll talk around how we really helped the customer. So this was a retail organization, and they had really kind of typical business challenges, similar to along the lines of what Andrew highlighted. And so this is having data sources in lots of different locations, in different regions, geographies. They really didn't have a unified approach for their analytics. Now, in this particular project, they wanted to focus on Scope 3 Category 1, which is purchased goods and services. And they really wanted a unified approach of how to collate that data across the entire organization to be able to report across it. And they had kind of limited or accurate insights that they could get off of the back of it because that data was so disparate. And the other challenge is, once you're first getting started, how do you build a data model? And I think there's lots of skilled businesses who can help you build a data model. But really, there's quite a lot to a broad ESG data model, especially if you want to be extensible for the future. And so those are kind of the business challenges. And really, the aims of the project were to unify that data across all of the different markets and locations and sites and businesses, really align all of that into a common ESG data model, and then create kind of reusable templates so it could be extended from there to pull in more data and to actually pull in more sources and really extend it and build on it from there. And really use that as the foundation for creating a sustainable, scalable sustainability reporting going forwards. So in terms of the project itself, there were kind of 5 key milestones. So as I said, the main thing was to obviously collate the data and build the reports, but we kind of broke this down so it kind of had actionable outputs as well as kind of clear benefits to those particular steps. So the first thing is around preparing the environment and preparing your source data. Before you really get started with sustainability, you need to see what have you got from a technology perspective and where is your data and what data quality do you have. So there's no two ways around it. You have to start with analyzing your data. By doing that early, you're able to actually get a strong foundation for understanding how to actually collect your data, where you're sourcing it from, and what challenges you have with that data, what data quality issues you've got, what are the holes in your data, where's there perhaps errors in your data. And really identifying that early means you can start tackling that throughout this project and actually make sure you're solving data quality as you continue to go out through the remaining milestones. And the second milestone was really deploying that platform. And we use sustainability data solutions for Microsoft Fabric for this solution. So really taking the sustainability functionality that's built into Microsoft Fabric and using that as the platform to build out the solution here. Now, there's lots of benefits that you get from doing that in terms of out-the-box notebooks and pipelines, but really the main benefit that I see is that ESG data model. There's 400 plus tables that help you actually define what that data model looks like, which means you're not only solving your problem for now, but you're extensible for later as well. I say there are 400 tables. For this particular solution, we only actually used about 12, 15 in total for the report. But it meant that we can extend and use those other tables as we onboard new data and as we need them for the future. So really, the model that's being built and implemented is not just usable now for Scope 3 Category 1. We can use this to pull in not just more categories of Scope 3 or Scope 1 or Scope 2, but also waste and water, and then start looking at governance and social data as well. And really, the model is supporting all of those different areas. In fact, during the actual project itself, we identified that some of the data wasn't actually wasn't actually Category 1, sorry, it was actually Category 11. And so we were able to really quickly just rebind that data to a different category without having to develop some new model or kind of enhance our model further. The milestone 3 was really creating that reusable ingestion pipeline. As with any sustainability solution or any data project, to be honest, you need to start small. You need to think, what's my scope that I originally want to start with? So in this particular case, it was Scope 3 Category 1, but even as a subset of that, we only targeted a set of countries. So we took a handful of countries that we wanted to source that data from, rather than trying to tackle every country in the world at the same time. So really what we wanted to make sure is we were building something that was repeatable and reusable, not only when we onboarded new customers or new countries, but also when we pulled in additional scopes and additional data. And so really it's having that scalable, repeatable way to connect to those data sources and land that data into the platform. Because really that's the first problem that you've got. How do I source it and how do I land it in? And so this is where you come up with the repeatable patterns. In this case, we were pulling from data sources such as Microsoft Fabric, such as Snowflake, such as Excel files or exports from other downstream systems. And really it's creating these repeatable patterns that support all of these different data source types. The next milestone, and probably the main milestone, is milestone 4, which is really creating a Power BI report off of the back of it. The challenge with kind of these sustainability projects is until you can see the output and you can see a decision that's been made, or you can see a piece of or result that comes off of the back of it, it's very difficult for the business to kind of see the value of all of the effort that's gone into collating that data, transforming it, really until you can get to that actionable insight where you can do something. And so kind of obviously this part was building a report that we could not only use internally, but also use with customers and suppliers for this retail business as well. And I think I want to kind of hang on this one a little bit more and talk around some of the specific kind of outputs, decisions and benefits that we got from the report that was built. And I think this kind of falls into kind of 4 buckets, really. You've got, we can actually do reporting. I think that's the main thing. Sounds very simple, but I think there are 2 main things that we could report on, which meant that we could take action. And that's what's the overall emissions and what's the emissions intensity. And this gives you 2 different things you can target. It's easy to say, oh, I want to go for the highest emissions, that biggest number over there, I want to make that lower. But that might not be where you can make the fastest change. Maybe there are other changes that you can make where you want to actually target emissions intensity. So when I talk about overall emissions, I'm talking about kilograms or metric tons of CO2. When I'm talking about intensity, I'm talking about the dollar spend per kilogram of CO2. So if you can actually reduce that, overall, your emissions will come down, and it's something that's a bit more scalable. And so the ability that we had there was to look at all of the countries for this particular business, the individual sites for this business, and have a look at who we want to target as an overall emissions and who we want to target that we could make more efficient in their emissions intensity. The next area was thinking around efficiencies around calculation methodology. So there's lots of different ways that you can do calculations that, there's no regulatory specific way that you need to do it. So it's very important to understand what option you choose, but there are few different ways to do it. Because we were looking at purchased goods, the 2 main ways that you think about is you could either calculate it based on the volume of something, so the mass, or the spend. So how much do I spend on a particular product? Now, in our particular customer here, spend was variable, right? You might buy the same product, but it might cost slightly different amount in slightly different locations. Whereas the mass of a particular product is always the same and is always consistent. So really the preference in this scenario is to go for a mass-based calculation. So really actually making sure that wherever possible, we were identifying where we're using mass-based calculations, where we're using spend-based, and providing that granularity and that viewpoint such that we can improve the way that the data is collated and start thinking about how we can actually change the way that the data is collected from the individual sites. Next was how can we make efficiencies in the kind of end customers or consumers for this business, as well as the suppliers. And this is where the report gives you the ability to actually look at not only what the overall emissions are or the emissions by location, but also the emissions of individual products or grouping those products together into product categories. And this gives you the ability to identify what are more or less sustainable products or what are more or less sustainable suppliers. And this gives you the ability to then start making decisions of, do you purchase this product from a different location or do you use an alternative product that is perhaps slightly more efficient? And this enables you to actually reduce the overall impact of your end consumers so they actually can see the benefit and how you're reducing your emissions as a business. And then lastly, you've got the actual efficiencies that you can do in those markets and in those sites and in those locations. And this really comes largely down to kind of data quality, kind of the same thing you hear with a lot of data products or data solutions. It comes down to how are you actually tagging your data, which products, which categories do they belong to, and what kind of efficiencies can you make to actually make alterations to the actual locations themselves. And so really those were the kind of four main areas and kind of actionable things that we took from the project itself. And then last but not least,
I was just going to say, Paul, just very quickly, the interesting point there is it's a journey, right? You're not going to crack this overnight. This is a journey. And you're absolutely spot on where, you start small and then you grow as you kind of understand the complexity and the requirements as you go forward. And we're seeing this a lot. And I know you at Ascent do this an awful lot where you start with that POC to prove it out, prove the data, prove the calculations, the model, and then you kind of expand and build on that. And it's just a really important point to stress.
Exactly. Thank you. I definitely agree with that. And I think that kind of leads into milestone 5 as well, right? Because it's not just a case of doing that POC or pilot and just implementing it. It's around, and what's next? So as part of that phase, it's how do we plan for the broader implementation? What other data do we need to ingest? What are the next KPIs that we want to target? So what are the next categories of scope 3, or which are the next scopes, or even outside of carbon? Do we want to target water next or waste next? It's really making sure that you've got a clear plan around what that next step would be. That's not to say you have to create a plan for absolutely every single piece of data that you want, but you want to be able to have a clear plan for the next few months with the viewpoint of what you're going to target longer term. And so really that's the key output from milestone 5 is not just what's that plan, but how do you implement it? What we want to do at Ascent is we don't want to have you completely reliant on us building the entire solution for you. We want to make sure that we're bringing you along on this journey as well. So we actually do knowledge transfer throughout the implementation, and we make sure that you have a clear understanding of how we've collected that data, how we've transformed that data, and how you can consume and use it. So making your business self-sufficient and actually able to take this and grow it going forwards is very important to us. So we'd love to continue helping you in other ways, by perhaps adding AI on top of it and thinking around how you can reduce your overall impact going forwards. So I think in terms of sustainability journey itself, I've kind of covered it a little bit with that customer journey, but just wanted to kind of reiterate it in a little bit of a user journey on this screen here. Now, to Andrew's point, you're probably somewhere in that top left, and a lot of businesses are collecting that data into Excel. It's quite manual today. They're having to speak to a lot of different people across the business and collect that data. So that may or may not be where you are, but that's kind of typically what we see in a lot of the customers that we speak to. So the first thing that we really want to do is understand what that current state is. And that's understanding, have you done something already? If you have, fantastic. How can we grow and build upon that? If you've not started doing it, let's help you identify, where does your data reside? How good is your data quality that you have? What's a good starting place? What's the right KPI to start with? What's the right category, scope? Is it carbon? Is it water? Is it waste? Where do we start? And making sure that we can really help you actually get started on that journey. At that point, you implement sustainability data solutions on Fabric, right? That's typically what our next step and suggestion would be. And then you're ingesting your data. So we've identified those sources. You want to integrate it and ingest it into Fabric. You want to transform that data and get that data into that ESG data model, benefit from that model that Microsoft has built for you, and actually make sure you're aligning your data into it. And then start to create those visualizations and those reports on top so you can get to those actionable insights that your business can actually use. Now, along that journey, you may find that it's quite a lot of manual effort, or maybe you don't know how to do your sustainability calculations. Well, if that's the case, Microsoft Sustainability Manager is a great complementer to implementing sustainability data solutions as well. What Microsoft Sustainability Manager is giving you is it's a SaaS-based product which has a bunch of pre-built calculation methodologies for carbon, waste, and water, as well as lots of emissions factors and ways to manage your emissions factors and your calculation methodologies. So where Fabric is fantastic for giving you that fully customizable solution to really build whatever you like, Sustainability Manager is really helping you get started and really helping you understand that methodology and manage all of that. And I don't think I'm trying to undersell here. The management is super important because of the governance piece that Andrew mentioned earlier. You need to make sure that what the most important thing is, how have you calculated it, and making sure that you understand that methodology that's there. And again, that governance and that auditability is built into Microsoft Sustainability Manager.
Yeah, and just very quickly to add, it's like you say, it's a SaaS product, so we keep that updated. When you think about the factor libraries and the def refactor libraries, we recently updated those to 2024 standards. And then, when you think about the data model, again, we manage and maintain the data model around these frameworks, the voluntary and the non-voluntary frameworks that I keep referring to. So it is SaaS in the true sense that we manage and maintain and try to make sure that you're as compliant as you can in terms of when you kind of hold that data, how you hold that data and present that data back.
Exactly. Thanks, Andrew. And the next piece that's complementary to this as well is kind of thinking about your broader data governance. Now, what Microsoft Purview is giving you in this instance is where Sustainability Manager is serving your governance of sustainability. Purview is giving you that full end-to-end integration. Where's your data coming from? How are you transforming it? Which reports is that data finding its way into? And it's providing you that end-to-end lineage and cataloging of your data, making it easy to find your data and also easy to actually have a look at that end-to-end lineage that you've got. And then from there, you've obviously got your ESG reporting that you want to use internally, or the CSRD reporting and auditing that you might want to do off the back of that as well. So that's kind of the journey that you go through. From Ascent, how we can actually help you is we have a number of different accelerators and offerings, specifically around Fabric and sustainability, where we can really assist you. Kind of mentioned already the kind of the sustainability kind of workshops where we'd start. And this is effectively part of our kind of readiness assessment, and where in this particular scenario, we'd love to kind of work with you on looking at your sustainability use cases. What are those KPIs, data sources, etc., that we can really assist you with. But going beyond that, we also have fast starts, so we can help accelerate the deployment of Microsoft Fabric, as well as the data engineering and the transformations. As I mentioned, we've got these pre-built templates for ingesting data from various sources, for transforming it and merging it into the ESG data model from Sustainability Data Solutions. So we've got quite a few accelerators that really reduce that time to implementation for you as an end user. So really that kind of comes on to the main way in which we can assist you, which is implementing a pilot. So similar to the customer journey and the customer story that I spoke about at the start. Typically, this is kind of a 4 to 6 week project. It was a 6-week example that I was speaking over previously. And this is where we would help you, as I say, validate your data, understand your your existing location, help you deploy Fabric, set it up, get sustainability data solutions in, help you ingest, run, and optimize your calculation methodology and your engineering, and help you develop that plan going forwards of how you actually implement more sources and actually how you ingest more data. And I think we can, throughout that, as I mentioned, make sure that we're knowledge sharing and bring you along on that journey. So
just great to see successes that you're seeing from these as well in our customers. The value that you bring in, and how you're accelerating this journey for them as well. So it's great. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And as I said, that pilot's a great place to start if you're ready for that. But if you're not ready and you want to learn more, we can also happy to do a demo. I've spoken the theory a lot today, and I've spoken about a customer journey. But if you wanted to see a demo of it in action, that's something that we can definitely assist with as well. If you want to take that visioning or sustainability workshop and you want to talk to us around how we can help you further, we'd love to talk to you. Or if you're ready to go into that pilot because you've already started your journey, then we're more than happy to get started with you there as well. So I think that's probably it from me today, and I think thank you very much for listening. I'm conscious we're at time. I think there's 1 or 2 questions, so we are probably going to stick around and answer a couple of questions. But before I do that, in case you have to drop, thank you very much for listening today. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you. But I've got a question I can see in chat, so I'm just going to quickly jump across into that. A question from a viewer: is there a simple connection into Microsoft for the Azure usage data? And are there standard formats, or is that a set value? So the actual Azure usage data itself is something that actually has its own reports. So Microsoft actually collate that data, and you can see the impact of your Azure implementation. And there's actually a connector built into Microsoft Sustainability Manager. So you can actually connect to that data and actually manage and report on top of it. So there's both kind of out-the-box reporting that exists for the Azure usage, but also a great integration into Sustainability Manager, really supporting that SaaS platform to be able to actually use that as well. How we can help you in Ascent is helping you make sure you're integrating that into your broader data, right? That's effectively use of purchased goods, but you want to integrate that with your other data as well, and that's kind of feeding into how we can assist. I've got another question that I'm seeing here. Did you want to add anything to that, Andrew? Or is there...
I was just going to say to the first one that as Paul said, it's the technology is called Azure Emissions Impact Dashboard. It's an app that you can go download. That will allow you to see what your kind of Azure carbon emission output is at the subscription level. We also have something called the carbon optimization tool, which takes you down to sort of a lower level, so you can start to look at kind of resource groups and things like that, and what the impact of your emission data is. So yeah, that's the technology. Azure Emissions Impact Dashboard. Just go look at it on Microsoft.com. You can go download that, and as long as you've got a subscription, you'll be able to start to consume the data.
Thank you. Next question we've got is, what's the first step an organization take to get their ESG data ready for analysis with Fabric? So I think there's kind of two elements to this, really. This is thinking around, where do you want to go first? So thinking around which KPIs you want to go after, and having a look at the quality of that data in that space. How many different source systems does that reside in, and how broad is the coverage that you have for that data? Often organizations that we've spoken to start with things like purchased goods and services, because that's data they've got high quality and high confidence in. Or some organizations look at business travel because there are expenses systems that they can get that data from. So really starting with a source or a set of data that you trust is a great place to start. And then obviously from there you can start thinking around how you can improve the other data sources in the other areas as well. But complementary to that, you need to think around how you want to do the calculation. This is obviously something we can help guidance on, but this is something that you might want to think around in terms of which emissions factors and estimation factors you want to use. Now, as Andrew mentioned earlier, Microsoft Sustainability Manager has a number of these out of the box. Things like DEFRA emissions factors are available, and you can use those. Or there may be other methodologies or other emissions factors that you want to use depending on your particular industry and your particular suppliers. And whether you've got access to that data. So understanding what that looks like and how that maps back into your data is very important. So if you think, what's my data quality and what are my emissions factors, and then how do I join the two? So my emissions factors generally are held at, let's think purchased goods and services. A particular product has a certain amount of emissions. So how do I match that to match those emissions factor categories into my data? And this is where often you think about having to categorize your data and group your data, because having the individual emissions for a very particular specific asset is not always possible, depending on your particular industry.
Yeah, just to close out on that, we try to take the hard work out of it. That's the point of the platform. So we provide things like templates and guidance documents in terms of what it is you need to bring in. The reality is we can't take away all the hard work. There's still an element of it. I think to Paul's point, what's really important is understanding which ESG data points you want to report on. And that typically comes out of something called a double materiality assessment, which a lot of companies are doing today. And that's really understanding, from your sustainability strategy through to your sort of compliance and regulatory framework reports, it's understanding what you need to report on. I think the important thing is understand what you need to report on. And we try to take as much, both Microsoft and Ascent try to take as much of the hard work away around the format of that data and the transformation of that data.
I think that's all of the questions, is what I'm being told. So I just want to say thank you again to everybody for attending today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you, Andrew, for supporting. Always great to present with you. So thank you very much. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the week and weekend.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.